Great. Okay. Thanks.
Alrighty, and we're recording. Any initial questions for us before we jump in, or anything else to set up before we get started?
No, I think just a general overview of how to use it, what's meaningful, maybe some interpretation. I'll keep them in mind as we go through it if there's something I don't understand. And if we can pull up actual data from the toolbox at the end, that would obviously be great.
Yeah, I think Paul's plan is to actually walk through the actual Google Analytics interface. But if there's anything as we're going through this, if you need more detail or less detail, just feel free to give us that feedback.
Great. Okay. Will do. Thank you.
Bye, Paul.
And Corey, have you been in the GA interface before?
I have not, so this will all be brand new.
Okay, great. So the way that you can access this data is just by going to google.com/analytics. So when you first go here, you're going to have two different views that are available. One is called filtered website data, and one is called all website data. The filtered website data is generally what we would recommend using. It's excluding Viget from the data. So anytime that we're working on it, we are not showing up in this view, but we are showing up in this one. At some point, we think it would be helpful for us to exclude the TNC IP addresses as well. Right now, that's not happening. So if you have that list, that's something that I would definitely recommend doing, just to make sure that in this data that the TNC office is not included as part of that. We're just reaching the public users.
Okay, just a quick question on that then is I could see the point of excluding someone like myself that's an administrator of this, but TNC is actually an audience for us as well. We have about 200 people working on the thing that this is trying to teach them to do.
Okay.
So is there a way to, just IP addresses, like my IP address is what you're suggesting?
Yes, definitely. We can definitely do that.
Okay, great, thanks.
Mm-hmm. So when you first log on into GA, you're going to default to this audience overview report. Well, actually, the first page that you'll see is something like this. So this is the home screen, and this is just generally a starting point. I don't normally look at any of this data, and I'll jump into one of these reports that exists on the side. This overview report shows, for example, the time of day that people are visiting, how many people have come to the site, and some other information about how they're finding the website, their most popular pages, and devices that are being used. So it is a helpful overview, but I find that some of these more detailed reports are typically a little bit more helpful. So if we first go into our audience overview report, this is going to give you just at a high level some information about the usage of the website. So users is the number of individuals who have visited your site. So this is the same device and the same browser. If you go to the website on your work computer and your home computer and mobile device, then Google Analytics is going to see you as 3 unique users because it's not able to tie across those specific devices. A user can have multiple sessions. So a session is anytime someone is visiting the website, and then up to 30 minutes of inactivity. So if I am visiting the website and I go to lunch and I come back 29 minutes later and I continue navigating, then that is going to be considered part of the same session. But if I come back 31 minutes later and continue navigating, then that is going to be considered a new session from the same user. So users will always be the lowest number, sessions will always be the middle number, and then page views will always be the highest number, because within a given session, a session can have a certain number of page views. So if I view 5 pages on the site, then I'm one user who has 1 session and 5 page views. So our pages per session is just the ratio of the page views number and the sessions number. Average session duration is how long people are spending on the website. And then the bounce rate is the percentage of people who view a page without interacting with it and then leave. And so we can actually, I'm going to skip over talking about this number right now, but we can come back to it because there are a couple of caveats, both with the way that it's calculated and then also with your specific analytics setup.
Okay.
One quick note about any type of duration numbers that are reported in GA is that this number is typically underreported, and the reason is because GA uses timestamps to calculate this. So if you view page A and then page B and then page C, and then you leave, even if you spent 10 minutes on that last page, on page C, Google is not able to know that you spent the time on that page. So because it's looking at the timestamp that each of those pages was loaded. And so it knows that page C was loaded at a specific time, but it doesn't know how long you spent on that page. And so we find that this duration number is typically helpful when you're looking directionally. If you're looking at, are you improving engagement year over year, for example, but it's not helpful in the absolute to say, oh, I don't think that someone could actually read this page in 2 minutes or something like that, because it's certainly possible that that number is higher.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Do you have any initial questions about this report?
Everything that you're saying makes sense, and thanks for the explanations around those. So we'll get to the bounce rate, but then also, I guess, these demographics at the bottom. Are we about, like, what's the resolution here? So by country, by city?
Yep. This will give you a breakdown. You can see the individual languages that people are visiting the site. So this is based off of a user's browser setting. You can see the country, city, and then details about the individual browser, details about how many people are coming from mobile devices and what those devices are. All of these reports are also accessible through this navigation on the side, which I can just quickly walk through, because there are certain other reports that are not listed here that are also helpful.
Okay. And so just on the browser and the languages, does that mean they're arriving and their browser is typically in Spanish, or does that mean we have a Google Translate built into the site and they are actively clicking on that translate?
Something like the ES here means that the person's browser language settings are in Spanish, but not necessarily that they're using Google Translate on the site.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. So a few other things. If you want to see where a person came from, you can go into the GA report and the locations. So you can see a breakdown by country. We have the top level usage by country, and then the relative engagement metrics. So for example, if people are spending more or less time from a given country than others, Colombia is spending 10 minutes on the site, but it's probably not meaningful because we were only looking at 11 users there. So one person could skew that number upward. But as more data accumulates over time, it's helpful to see engagement rates by country. You can click into any particular country, and that will isolate down just the cities for that country. So if we want to click into the United States, then we can see where people are actually visiting from the US. Generally, something like this isn't super useful unless you are trying to troubleshoot and wonder if your internal IP addresses are actually being excluded. And so this might be a sign that if you see a city here that you would expect is higher than normal, then that could be a sign that you actually need to filter that out because it's some sort of internal user. This might also give you a sense of the TNC folks who are using the website, if they're in multiple offices, who is actually using it or not using it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
In terms of actually, let's go to this report. So within the technology report, there is a report that is a little bit hidden. So within technology, you go to network and then over to hostname. And so normally we would just expect that to be waterfundstoolbox.org. There's a little bit of the staging in here, which is appearing just because the IP addresses are not appropriately filtered. But if anyone is using Google Translate to see the site, then there will be an additional host name here called translate.google.com. So if you're thinking that potentially you need to support other languages in the future as the site grows, that would be a good way to identify that potentially, because it's actually being hosted on that Google domain, and so you would see that listed here.
Got it. Okay.
And Paul, I have a quick question.
So, yeah, go ahead.
So we actually have a Google Translate plugin installed on the site. Like people can navigate across, and then it's yeah, on the site. There it is. And then for some of those, it's actually using locales and craft. So it's not actually using Google Translate. It's like a fallback. Someone selects that Google Translate button, let's say for Chinese, which we don't, or actually now we do, let's say Portuguese, which we don't have a fallback for a locale for. Would that still appear in that particular GA view, or would that be maybe tracked separately?
So this actually is, it's not changing the domain, so it would not appear in that specific report. I didn't realize that there was Google Translate on the site. Let me check and see if we're actually tracking that button right now.
Okay, I think we are. I believe Albert set that up.
And I can show you specifically if we are. Yep. So we are tracking that, and we can look at that.
Cool. Okay. Great. Sorry to butt in.
It's all good. So just a few other details around your audience that may be helpful. If you're curious to see how people are actually accessing the site and what devices they're using, the mobile report is particularly helpful. So it will show you desktop versus mobile versus tablet. And then if you want to see the specific devices that people are using, then you can click down to the devices report, and that's going to show you the individual types of phones that people are using. And so, you know, this is helpful in the course of testing or just making sure that we're accommodating these users. And you know, you'll see a pretty long list here as this list continues to grow. There are a few other reports that may be helpful for you. One is the cohort analysis. So this is showing if you're engaging people over time. So if you look, for example, at the last 30 days, this report is showing of people whose first visit was this particular day, how frequently did they come back on day 1 or day 2 or day 3 or day 4 and so on. And so, you know, ideally you would have people continuing to come back and reference the site over and over again as a tool. And so you can see whether that is actually happening, whether people are continuing to stick around or not. And so, you know, these percentages might not be too meaningful if you're looking at just 3 users, because, you know, that a single additional user coming could directionally change things. But again, as the site continues to grow, this cohort chart might be a little bit more meaningful.
Great.
Okay. So this is the audience report. We didn't go through everything, and certainly happy to go through any other ones that you might have questions about. But I also wanted to just highlight within the other main sections of the reporting, the reports that we typically look at and find most helpful. So I can jump on to acquisition unless you have any other questions at this point.
Yeah, let's go through it all. I have a few questions, but they might be answered as we go. So
okay.
I think that's good for audience for the moment.
Great. Okay. So acquisition is generally how do people reach the site? What is driving traffic to this particular website? So if you go into your all traffic report and then your source and medium report, this is the report that is generally showing you how people are arriving. So the source is a specifically where they came from. The medium is a more rolled up aggregate view of sources. So let's actually go to medium first, and then we'll talk about the source and medium. So I clicked on this primary dimension, which is changing this first level of the column. And so we have 3 mediums. None means that someone either typed in the URL directly or they clicked a link that GA can't identify. So if it came from a chat message or an app, like an email app that someone had sent a link from, Something along those lines. That's going to show up as direct traffic in GA with a medium of none. A referral is anytime somebody links to your website from another website and somebody clicks that link. So the New York Times writes an article about you. They link to the Waterfronts Toolbox website, and then a user clicks that link on the New York Times website. That is considered a referral from the New York Times. And then organic is any type of search engine that you're not specifically paying for, but if Google is just surfacing that as a resource for particular keywords, then that is how you would access that data. So if we toggle back over to the source and medium, then we can see the combination of the specific sources with the individual mediums. So you see that organic, you have most of your traffic, 72 users coming from Google. You have a few people who are coming from Bing. You have a few people who are coming from social networks like LinkedIn or Facebook or from email. If there's a referral and you want to specifically understand where that referral is coming from beyond just the domain, then you can click to the referrals section of your acquisition report and then click into the specific source that is driving the traffic. So if we wanted to see what nature.org page is driving traffic over to the Waterfunds site, we'll click on that. And then it looks like there are 3 different pages that are driving the traffic. So sometimes it's coming from search. If people are searching for a specific resource and the Waterfunds link comes up. The other one is from our initiatives page. And so if you click this little arrow, it's going to drive and show you exactly what page that relates to. So it's this Rivers and Lakes page, and then down here at the bottom, there's the link to the Waterfunds Toolbox. And so that's definitely helpful for understanding what type of internal promotion is being a traffic driver, and then also understanding how people are writing or talking about your website outside of the organization. So if people are writing about you, how are they talking about you, and just kind of keeping a pulse on what's driving traffic and what's the sentiment of that traffic.
Is there, I guess not a best practice, but is there one that you would commonly expect to see for, say, more established websites? Is that question in terms of like, is it usually, maybe there is no average or norm here, but say that one that we have 300 or whatever that is, 249 hits on for none. Is that what you would expect?
These proportions of traffic really vary by website. It's hard to say that you want at least 30% or at least 50% of organic traffic or direct traffic, for example. Okay. I think a healthy balance is generally good, just because if you're getting too much of your traffic from any particular place and then something about that changes, like Google changes its ranking algorithm and no longer shows your results, and that was 90% of your traffic, then you're much more at risk for having fluctuations as a result of those changes.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. So one other report that can be helpful is if you notice within the source and medium report that sometimes social networks are split a little bit. So for example, m.facebook is the mobile version of Facebook. If someone was using the desktop version, it would appear as a different row here. And you can expand out the number of rows down here at the bottom. But sometimes you may want to roll up just your general social promotion. And so you can see that through this social network referrals report. So this will take all of those unique rows for social networks and aggregate them into a single place. So that's just kind of a nice way to get that data if that question comes up.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so continuing on, so we've gone through the audience report, which is, who are your visitors and what are their attributes. We've gone through the acquisition report, which is how are people reaching the site. The behavior report relates specifically to the content on your website. And so how are people engaging with that content? What are they looking at? What are they doing on the website itself? So the most helpful reports to look at are, I would say, these three reports within site content. So your all pages report is just going to show you a table of your most popular pages. So this is your home page, and then these are all of your additional pages here. The number of page views, the average time on page, the number of entrances, which is the time that was the first page of the session, the bounce rate, the exit rate, and so the bounce rate is the rate that people are leaving if it's the first page of the session. The exit rate is the rate that people are leaving regardless of what step it is in a person's session. So if you're seeing that a particular page has a very high exit rate, then that might be a page to consider trying to think about ways that you might keep people on the site and continue engaging with them, or surface some additional content that might be relevant to them. If you are looking at this, it can be a little bit challenging to get broader learnings beyond at a page-by-page level. And so the content drill down is a helpful way to roll up some of these pages by site section. So if you wanted to see all page views of getting started page views, or all page views of project cycle. So to roll all of those up, you can go to your content drill down report. And so this is every getting started page rolled up by page views and then the associated engagement metrics. If you see a case where there are two rows that are similar, so for example, row 3 and row 5, this version without the trailing slash is the home page for the project cycle. This row 3 is anything that has a slash means that it was a subsection within that, but not necessarily the home page. So if we click into the slash project cycle here, then we can see all of the pages that relate just specifically to that subsection of the website. So these are all of those pages within that subsection of the website. If you want all of that in a single place and you don't want that split up, or you want to be able to filter on multiple things, then you can use this table filter at the top of the page. So say you wanted to include any getting started page or any project cycle page. You could say, I just want to include page containing getting dash started. And if you wanted to include multiple types of pages, then what we could do is use a regular expression to use a pipe, which is an or operator. And so we could say getting started or project cycle. And if I have that, then I can filter this table for just those types of pages. And so that can be helpful because it rolls things up, and it also gives us these aggregate metrics at the top of the page only for those types of pages that I had specified.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Do you have any other questions at this point?
No, sorry, I'm just thinking through a range of things. One is we have videos across this as well, but I remember Albert asking, we didn't pay for the premium version of Vimeo, and so we can't actually track that. But the I think something we could really use Baguette's help with is helping us navigate. Of course, we have to define it on our side, but what does success look like, and what does failure look like? Like, when should we actually kill a page because the bounce rate is this or that, and that it'll be something, Becca, I think we could use your help just maybe defining over time.
Okay. Yep. Absolutely. And I think that, given the traffic level at this point for the month of March, I would be reluctant to do too much based off of the relatively low volume that we have right now. I would say, for any type of page that, we would want at least a few thousand page views of it before we could make too many assumptions about how people might be using that or what they're doing as a result.
Got it.
I think Yep.
Yeah, but those kind of metrics like that, that's perfect. Just knowing of when does the data become meaningful. If we are getting a low, I guess, viewing or a low amount of time on a page, some ideas on what we can do to better, improve the content, those kind of things, depending on maintenance budget, of course, Becca. We'll be looking for advice on as we go forward.
Yeah, that sounds great. If we can talk about that during our monthly status call, maybe think about when we want to check in sort of on analytics next, and then maybe sort of review the site's current performance, and maybe try to do like a quick report on it. That could be a good next step, maybe in a couple months once you've picked up some more traffic.
Okay, sounds good.
So the other reports within the behavior report that are helpful to look at are the landing pages report. I think that there's typically an assumption with a lot of clients that that people are hitting the homepage as the first page of somebody's visit, and then they're clicking a second level page, and that if somebody has moved into a very specific detail page that's maybe 2 or 3 levels deep, that they've already seen the previous content around getting started or the toolbox or what it is. But in reality, that's very rarely actually the case. So we see that right now, out of the 770 sessions in March, that only 72% saw the homepage as the first page of their visit. But other people landed directly on what is a water fund or what is water security. And these ultimately 52 other pages on the website. And I think it's helpful if you're looking at these landing pages, considering the bounce rate for these specific pages, and thinking about, if somebody were to land on a page like this as the first of their visit, maybe they're searching on Google for a resource, and then they hit this. Does the user have the context that they need were they to land directly on this page, the first of their visit? Or is there anything more that we could be doing to showcase who TNC is, or what is available within the water fund toolbox, or things like that? So that's just something to be thinking about. I would say that this 72% number is actually a lot higher than we typically see for clients. Normally, it's probably between 15 and 25% of total sessions.
Okay, and so that's 72% that are finding the site via the homepage. Just to reiterate again, right? Okay. Yep,
exactly. Are landing on that page as the first page of their session.
Okay, yeah, and you're right. As we get a bigger sample size, we'll be able to make some more meaningful conclusions.
Yep. So another report that I think is very often underutilized but can be really helpful is the site search report. I think lots of times we have a tendency to want to try to read the tea leaves in the data and really think about what people might be wanting that they can't find. But the search box is very specifically people explicitly telling us that they wanted a specific type of content that they weren't able to see. And so when people make a search in the search box, we are tracking that within GA, and that is appearing within the site search report. So you can see the specific terms that people have used in the search terms report. So it looks like right now there have been 56 different queries that people are looking for. So you can look at this general list and see if there are common things that maybe we could be trying to address. So business case and business plan seem somewhat related. So maybe that's something that could be surfaced at some point. It looks like there are a lot of specific cities that people are searching for, or locations, and so maybe that's something that could be incorporated more, especially if you start to see common patterns over time. I definitely would not take action based off of a single search by any means, but if you start to really see these patterns stay consistent over time in terms of what people are looking for, then this could be a good way to figure out what type of new content you should be writing, as opposed to stuff that you should be getting rid of or trying to streamline away.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Great.
And then so everything that we've looked at so far relates to page views, but we're also tracking some custom data. So for example, if you are using the navigation, or you're clicking an outbound link to Facebook, We really wouldn't want something like this to be counted as a bounce because you're continuing to stay within the TNC ecosystem. You're continuing to do things that are helpful and valuable, and it shouldn't be seen the same as if somebody just leaves. The same thing goes for watching a video or for doing some other things. And so event tracking is something that is configured on a per site basis, and this is something that Albert and I have worked to set up. So right now, if you have any questions about how people are using the site, this is probably a good place to go. So video is any embedded YouTube video that exists on the site is being measured. Internal click and outbound click are if the link points to another Waterfunds Toolbox page, then it's considered an internal click. If it is going outside the site, then it's considered an outbound click. And then if someone is downloading a specific file or submitting a form, then you can see those specific events as well. So if we want to look specifically at internal clicks, I can click into this table and drill down just into those internal clicks. So the value that is listed here is the text of the link. So there were 183 people who clicked getting started. There were 133 people who clicked toolbox. If you want to see where that specific page exists or what that link relates to, then you can click into that very specific word and then change your primary dimension here to page. And so this is going to show you the page that that event was triggered on, or a set of pages if there are multiple pages. So this, I believe, relates to this navigation link here, especially because it's in all capital letters. And so you can see when people were clicking that navigation link, what was the page that they were clicking it from. So that the way that we started here was by drilling first into the event and then trying to look into the page. But you can also do the opposite. So if you wanted to say from the getting started page, what were the links that people clicked most commonly? Then you can go to the pages report within your events. And then, well, here, let's do the what is a water fund. So we'll first click into the page, and then we can see all of the events that were triggered from that page. So they were mostly internal clicks, a few outbound clicks, and so if we you can drill down specifically into each of those, or you can just toggle over to your event action, which is just going to give you a list of all of the all of the things that were happening on that page. So start is starting a video. Progress is the progression through a specific video. How many people watched it to the 50% mark or to the completion mark. And then these additional links, if we expand this out, are showing all of the specific links otherwise that people were clicking on. So hopefully this is helpful at letting you understand specifically what people are doing on any particular given page. Now you see that this first item up here at the top is undefined, and unfortunately, when we had done the audit a couple weeks ago, we noticed that the tracking had originally been configured where the video was logging on every single page, even when someone actually wasn't playing a video. So I added an annotation here for when we fix that. So video tracking is accurate as of the 24th of March. So this is essentially gone away. It has essentially gone away since March 24th. But any of your video data is not accurate up to that point. It was loading on every page load, and so that's why you see such a high volume of video events there. So I would suggest, if you're analyzing the video specific data, making sure that your date range begins with March 24th or later to make sure that you're seeing that appropriately. And anytime that you see not set as a value in your events, you can pretty effectively just ignore it, recognizing that that's what's being logged pre-March 24th.
Thank you. And okay, that's very clear. And just to confirm, that's YouTube, right? Since we're pulling from both Vimeo and YouTube, that's just tracking YouTube. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And if you go for the Vimeo paid plan, that's definitely something that we could help you track at some point.
Okay. Great.
Yep.
What about downloading documents? That looks like everything else is being covered. But like in the library and just every other page has something you can download. Is that? Oh, there it is. File download. Thank you.
Yep. So within file download, if you click and drill into that, then you can see specifically the text of what was downloaded, and then if you want to drill into that specifically, you can see what file was downloaded. And so this is the TNC water funds report. And then of course clicking on that will actually give you the file that was downloaded. If the names here are not as helpful, you can just toggle over directly to the event label and see just the URL of each of the files that was downloaded. This may end up being more helpful, or it may be less helpful depending on the readability of those things. But basically one thing that we haven't covered is an event has 3 pieces of data associated with it. So one is the category, one is the action, and one is the label. And I don't know why they're named that. I wish that they were named something differently, but it's essentially a hierarchy of data that you can send to GA. So typically the category is the highest level of the hierarchy, like a file download. And action is a middle level of the hierarchy, like the name of the link, and then the label is the most granular piece of data that we would be sharing as part of the event. So you don't always have to drill in from the category to the action to the label. You can go straight to the label if that's something that's most helpful. So it just depends on how you want to isolate down specific types of data as to where you would actually go.
Okay. Yeah, I think that'll become more clear as, I mean, there's hardly anybody that's downloaded anything yet. So we'll see what becomes useful. Thank you, though. That's very helpful.
Yeah. And then the last thing that I wanted to cover in events was, so now we're looking at just March 24th through the 31st. So after the video tracking was implemented. If you want to see the information about a specific video, you can click into the video. And then this is your aggregate for all videos. So 40 starts, 20 completions, and then varying levels of progress through the different percentage thresholds. If you want to see that for each individual video, then you could toggle over to the event label where we're passing that data. And then you could drill in specifically to that video name. So if you want to look at just the water funds protecting water at its source, then we can see the number of people who have started that video, the number of people who have completed that video, and the progress for those people. And it's worth noting that this is, if someone is watching the video directly on YouTube, or they're watching it embedded on another website, that it's not being tracked. We're logging just the times that people are playing the embedded video on the Water Funds Toolbox website.
Got it. Okay, thanks. That's an important distinction.
Yes, definitely. And YouTube has its own set of analytics that will show you plays across the whole network, but this is also helpful in GA because you can correlate it with other things. You could say, of people who watched a video, where did they come from geographically, or a lot of other data like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great.
Excuse me. So just a couple of other quick things that I think are helpful to know. One is within your site content, if you want to see specifically how people are navigating, as opposed to what links they're clicking on, but just generally what pages are they navigating to. If you drill into a specific page, like what is water security, this report is also a little bit buried, but it's definitely a helpful one. If you toggle over to the navigation summary, then you can see specifically how people are reaching this page and then what they're doing from this page. So this is saying, all right, this is the page that I'm on right now. and I'm on the what is water security page. 12% of sessions entered directly on this page, and it was the first. It was the first page that somebody saw. But of these page views, 87% of those page views were coming from a previous page. And what was the page that drove people to this what is water security page? Then as people went on to other pages, 15% of those people left. It was the last page that they viewed. 84% continued on to other pages. And what were those other pages? And you have that list here. And so that's helpful at a more aggregate level to just understand how people are either reaching or leaving a particular page.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, that is really interesting.
Yeah. And as you think about either what other resources might be helpful or how to potentially reorganize your content, this is definitely a helpful way to look at that, where if very few people are going where you're intending to drive them, then that might be surfaced in a report like this.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
The other thing that we haven't covered, and I don't use this a ton, but it may be helpful for you, is that real-time data is available. Right now, if somebody visits the website, you can see the number of people who are visiting the website right now, what pages they're on, and then sometimes other data for those users. So if you were visiting from a non-Vigid IP address, then you would be able to see that data here and track. So if you're running some sort of promotion or email campaign that's intending to drive people and you want to make sure that it's working as expected, then the real-time report can be a helpful way to see that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The last thing that I wanted to just highlight, and there are a ton of things that you can do with this, it really is a very flexible tool, is Google's segmentation capabilities. So everything that we've looked at so far is just tables of data. But Google is really flexible in what you're actually able to look at or to see. So if we make a segment will reprocess all of the sessions just for the conditions that we specify. So for example, if you wanted to say, I want to see only people whose country was the United States and whose device was a mobile device and who came into the site from organic search or something like that, then you can very flexibly make a segment like that, and when you save it, then it will apply to any of the reports that we've been looking at so far. Mm-hmm. So it reprocesses every report only for the session-based conditions that you specify here. You can do that with visitor attributes. You can do that with pages. So I also want to only show sessions if they saw a specific page or they didn't land on the page. Anything like that is doable. And then the other thing that you can do is look at sequences. So if you wanted to say, I want to see people who viewed a specific page, like the of people who viewed getting started, what is a water fund? I want to see how many ultimately ended up viewing another page that might matter to this group of people, even if it wasn't necessarily the immediate next page that somebody viewed. But I want to know how many people ultimately went on to a methods page, for example, or to a components page. Mm-hmm. Or of people who did this, how many of those people watched a video? And we could do an event category of contains video here. So it's pretty much any question that you want to answer, segments will give you the ability to do so. It can be a little bit confusing to use, and so if you have any questions about that or about the data that you're seeing, definitely let us know, because there are a few little caveats and gotchas that are probably not worth covering in a 1 hour session, but definitely something that we can help with.
Okay.
Do you have any questions about the real-time reports or the segments?
No, unfortunately, I think what you told me here is useful for today, just as you just said. But I think I could imagine questions popping up once we start really using it. But I do have a question though on benchmarking, this bullet on the side. Could you tell me a bit about that?
Sure. So if you want, you can choose to opt into a specific benchmarking report, and you would do that through the GA admin, where you choose to anonymously share your data, and then you are able to access people's anonymously shared data as well. And you can see data around, for example, I'm not sure for there are certain industry verticals. I'm not exactly sure what we would do for non non-profits. And you can choose a certain number of daily sessions, and it will show you the common channels that people are coming in from, the common devices that people are using, and some other general benchmarking data. I am generally opposed to using a report like this, and the main reason is just because we have no idea what other organizations are, who they are, how their analytics is configured. There are a ton of different ways that you can actually set up analytics, where you're either splitting things up depending on the site, or you are tracking everything about your organization in a single place, like the entire TNC ecosystem. Could be tracked versus just the water funds toolbox. And so given all of those caveats and given the relatively low number of organizations that opt into sharing this, you might be looking at maybe 30 other organizations' aggregated data. I'm reluctant to look at that data and say, oh no, everyone else is spending a lot more on advertising, so therefore we should therefore opt into advertising. I think generally it makes a lot more sense just to look at your data and whether you're able to improve that in the metrics that matter to you over time, versus worrying about what some other organization is reporting, just because it might not even be rooted in reality. It could just be a function of their analytics setup.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of confounding factors. So thanks for the frank response there, and that's good to know. That we should just set some internal goals and measure ourselves against that. That's helpful.
Yep.
The one other thing that I quickly wanted to cover is I had mentioned that we are going to go back to the bounce rate, and so you see that if from March 24th onward, that the bounce rate is almost 40%, whereas if we look at it for the entire month of March, it was around 18%. The reason for that is because Google defines the bounce rate as a single hit session. So a hit could be a page view, or it could be an event, or it could be any type of interaction on the page. So if I land on this page and leave, then I am counted as a bounce. If I land on this page, but I click this Facebook link, which triggers an event, then I've triggered 2 hits on the page. I've triggered a page view, and then I've triggered an event with this. And so that is not considered a bounce. So the reason why I didn't cover this earlier was because the video events were loading on every page with the page load, it was affecting the bounce rate because a false video event was being counted for up to March 24th. And so for that reason, you'll see that the spark line here, or the trend line, is that you have essentially a 0% bounce rate until March 20th. And then after that point, then it begins to track accurately. And so I definitely apologize for the issue on that front, but it's just a small caveat related to the bounce rate. Anytime you're looking from March 20th onward, then you're definitely set, and it's not a problem.
Okay, that's very helpful to know.
Yeah. So I didn't have anything else to cover, but with the last 10 minutes, I was curious, aside from any other questions that you have, if you had any just general questions about how people are using the site, now we could go through how we would actually access that data in GA, or find that if you had any immediate questions around user behavior.
Sure. So I think I know how to find out how people are, who's using it where, for how long. If I want to know who's downloading which document the most, I would go to file download, right? That section you showed me. Or I guess maybe could you pull that up again? Just the file download.
Sure.
Is there any, I guess I've got this video as a reference now, which will be really helpful. But any other kind of definitions or user guide for Google Analytics?
If you're interested in learning more about GA or learning more about additional ways that we could potentially customize things, there is a free course that's offered by Google. It's called the Analytics Academy, and it will walk you through in more detail some of these concepts. You can get Google Analytics certified, and it takes maybe 2 days worth of watching videos, and then you take a test. I don't know if you're interested in doing something that intense, or if there are other, if there's general other terminology that you're not familiar with, Google does have a really good repository online of just general resources for questions like that.
Yeah, oh no, I'm not looking to become an expert. More of a, just a general reference, a much more modest goal of, say I forget what bounce means, and I want to provide that definition to somebody in a presentation. How can I make sure I have the proper boundaries around that?
The nice thing is that most of these little question marks will give you definitions. So if you mouse over it, it will give you a definition. So it should give you that in your general overview reports as well.
Okay, then I think that's sufficient for my own needs. Of just perfect. Yep. When I'm trying to show meaningful results, I need to be able to explain them, I suppose.
Yep.
Sorry, but so back, thank you for the file download piece. If I wanted to say these are the top 5 documents that are being downloaded, I would go, can you show me that one more time?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So behavior. Got it, okay.
And then if this isn't helpful, then toggling over to event label.
Mm-hmm.
One other caveat around this data is that it's tracking the actual link click on this. So if there is a page on the website that points to this, then we can know that the user clicked that link and send this data to GA. But if someone is accessing this URL directly, so for example, if I just copied this URL and pasted it into the browser, this is not being registered here. So if you have these links that are being sent out through email or being shared through Slack or visited directly, because this is a PDF file, it can't actually log the tracking that we would normally have on the website. So this is purely clicks on the links that point to a file like this on the Waterfront's website. But these files could get a lot more traffic from these other external sources and would not appear at all in the analytics data.
Okay. Okay, no, that's understood. Yeah, I recognize there's going to be caveats around the presentation of this data. But another thing is, so on the toolbox page, you have the option of contacting the administrator or submitting documents. Is there a way to track that? We've got 0 so far.
Let's see. Okay, let's see. I'm going to do a test submission if that's okay.
Okay.
Okay, so there, it looks like when you submit the form, it will take you to /contact?thanks. So actually, let's set this up right now. We can do this really quickly.
Okay.
So if this is a page in GA, and I just want to double check that it's actually logging in GA. Actually, I'll check here. Yep. Okay. So something that we haven't configured yet, but we could definitely do more of, is configure goals within GA. So I'm going to very quickly configure a goal for the contact form submission. And then I'll show you where you can get that data within GA.
Okay, great.
So we're saying the goal is called contact form submissions, and we're looking for if the user reached a specific destination page. We can also make a goal based off of if they counted a specific event, or if they spent a certain amount of time or viewed a certain number of pages on the site. And we're gonna say, I want the page to begin with /contact ? Thanks, and then save this goal. So now that's going to be available to us within our conversions and goals report. These goals are not retroactive. So if you apply one for video views or something like that, you're not going to have it for past days. But now that this is set up, anytime somebody submits that contact form, you're going to see that total number here. And if that data you're anticipating sharing certain data with other people, and you don't want to have to go into all these individual reports to pull that data, then we can list it as goals where you would have each of these things just in an aggregate, nicely formatted number here. The other thing that could potentially be helpful at some point is if you anticipate sharing out a bunch of this data, there is a tool that Google provides for free called Google Data Studio, and that is a way that we can pull in dashboards of Google Analytics data. So if we wanted to have a widget that showed the top videos, and a widget that showed the top file downloads, and a widget that showed the top sources, we could do all of that without you having to go into all of these individual GA reports. And then that Data Studio report can be shared in the same way that a Google Doc or a Google spreadsheet is shared. Same types of file permissions, and you can change the date range directly in Data Studio so that you always have something that can be nicely exported to a PDF if you want to pretty quickly. So if that's something that you're interested in, I imagine that we would be able to do something like that in the future as well for you too.
That sounds great. I mean, especially if it's free, then because it'll be periodic, but there's definitely people well above me that will want to know, we spent all this money, show us what it's doing. So that would be, much appreciated. Okay. And I guess because we only have about 2 more minutes here, say I want to add another user. I think I saw in the admin section there. Is that a pretty straightforward process? Yep.
So all you will do is go into your admin, and then user management, and then add new users. And you would just enter their email address here, and then you can choose certain permission levels. And it looks like we actually may need to use you. I thought that you were on here, but
yep, no, that's fine. But please, after the call, add me in, and that's great.
Yep, we'll do it. So the only caveat is that the email has to be associated with the Google account. So there's a page where if you have a work email, and you haven't associated that with the Google account, then you just basically fill out one short form to have that be associated. So you might get those types of notifications too.
Got it. Okay. Great. Well, I think that's all the time we have, but that was plenty to get a good grasp of how to use it and what's valuable about Google Analytics. So thanks for your time, Paul. And thanks for setting this up, Becca.
Great, thank you for your time as well, and definitely keep us posted if any questions pop up when you start to dig around in the data.
Sounds great. Okay, well, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Corey. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Bye. Thanks.